Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Alignment with Jen podcast. I am your host, Jen Ditzizi, and today I'm really excited because we're going to talk all about purpose. The messages that I get on Instagram, there's basically three main things that everyone wants to manifest: love, money, and fulfillment in their purpose, living their purpose and their career. And I can say for myself, this has been one of the biggest changes in my life, going from a career that was unfulfilling to a career that feels like play and is so deeply fulfilling. And it has radically changed my entire life. And I know that a lot of people get to this point where they're like, I'm doing pretty well in my career. I'm making pretty good money, but there's something that's missing. I feel like I am meant for more. I feel like there's something I'm meant to do that my soul is meant to express, but I'm not doing it because I'm afraid. I don't know what people think. People are going to judge me. And there's this transition period, and a lot of people don't make it across that gap. So many people, I would say most people don't. When you do, on the other side is your best possible life, because we are here to express something that our soul came here to express. And for some people, not for everyone, it's through their work, it's through their career. But I think every single person wants to feel fulfillment in their career. They want to feel like they are doing something that their soul came here to do. Most people just give up on it. And my goal with this episode today is for you to not give up on it, for me to give you a little bit of a toolkit to show you how you can start to cross that chasm of going from unfulfilled, things are pretty good, to super fulfilled, things are freaking amazing. Because I also know that money flocks to purpose. I fundamentally believe that when you are in your purpose, when you are doing something that your soul came here to express, money loves it. Money is like, sign me up, right? Loves it. And that is where I want you to get. I want you to get to that place where you feel like money is just flowing effortlessly, easily. You see all of these paths to create money. You see all of these paths to express yourself. You are helping people with your gifts of your soul. Because I believe that every single one of us has a unique purpose on this planet. And when we can access that purpose, we heal the planet and we do our best work. Right? Think about when you do something you absolutely love, how you show up for it versus when you do something you don't really love, right? It's a very different frequency. And I want to get you into this frequency. So we're going to talk about some of the things that make it difficult to cross this chasm, if you will, and some of the things that are going to make it easier. And I do want to take a moment and just define what purpose is. So your purpose is the thing that your soul came here to do. And I believe that our purpose is in service of others. I believe that if it's completely self-serving, it's typically not our purpose and it's not what our soul came here to do, because our souls are generous. Our souls came here to give, to love, to appreciate. That is what is like the creator, like source energy. And we came here to learn how to be like source. And so you expressing that part of yourself is, and you giving the greatest gift that you came here to give, there's nothing more powerful than that. I will also say as well that I believe purpose is more of a thread versus a destination. So for myself, my purpose has evolved, right? When I first started my business, I wasn't podcasting, but I was still in my purpose. Right now, I believe podcasting is part of my purpose. And so it can evolve what it looks like. But what I typically see is it's something that you absolutely love to do and something that really, really moves you. So for me, I think of my purpose as helping women to heal and to become the most unlimited versions of themselves. And I can express that in a lot of different ways, right? But our purpose is kind of that more overarching thing that moves us, that we're like, I just want to get out of bed so I can start to move this forward because it hits me on a deep, deep, deep level. It matters to me on such a deep level that I help women in that way. I can't stop thinking about it. I feel like I'm obsessed with it. So your purpose is typically going to be something, you don't have to be obsessed with it, right? We're all different levels of this session, but it's something that moves you, that you're like, I really feel for this cause. I really feel for this and it matters to me. And I want to put my time and energy behind it. And if you do not know, if you're like, I have no idea what matters to me that much, then you just need to experience more things. You need to try things. You need to put yourself out there. You need to play. You need to explore. You need to read more books in order to expose yourself to that. right? Because it's likely that you just haven't hit it yet, and that's fine. And for some people, I think their life's work is going to be to find what that thing is, right? For some people, it's going to come more easily. I think I've known since I was a kid, this is what I was meant to do, right? Other people, it's going to take more time. But I'm telling you, it is the most worthwhile journey you will go on, because the development of who you become and how you show up in that purpose is going to fundamentally change who you are. And it's going to make you feel so fulfilled on a deep level. And that is irreplaceable. Your purpose could be a business that you start. It could be a career that you follow, right? I have a client who is really, really high up in Google, and that was her purpose. She loved working at that company, right? For some people, it could be being an exceptional mother or an exceptional parent, right? But it's something that you want to devote yourself to. A lot of the people that I work with, it's their business that they create. And so that's what I'm going to speak to more within this episode. But just know that this will apply wherever you are. It could be for anyone. And I believe that if this episode resonated with you, it's because you know you have a purpose, and you may know what it is, you may not, but you know that there's something greater you're meant to do. And you feel this pull of, I really, really want to express myself in that way. I don't feel like I'll feel like my best self until I do that. And so that is really who this is for. It's for that person who wants to walk across the coals in order to express themselves on that deeper level. So let's talk about what prevents people from either finding their purpose or expressing their purpose. If you feel like you haven't found your purpose, part of it is likely because your mind is kind of blocking you from finding that because of fear. And if you know your purpose and you're not expressing it, the most common thing I hear is, well, like, I don't have the money to do it. That is not an excuse. That is like not an excuse whatsoever. Tony Robbins says there's no such thing as lack of resources. There's lack of resourcefulness. If you believe that you can't do something because you don't have the money for it, that is a fear on a deeper level that is using that as an excuse. It's an excuse. Same if you say you don't have the time to do it. It's not true. When I started my supplement business, I thought that was my purpose at the time. It was not my purpose. So I made a pivot. I didn't have the time. I didn't have the money. Guess what? I told myself, I was like, I don't want to make excuses. I want to show up for myself. I want to show up for what I believed at the time was my vision and my dream. And it was part of my path, absolutely. So I told myself 15 minutes every single day, I'm going to devote to working on this. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never started a business. I'd never created a physical product. I had no idea what I was doing. But I chunked it down so that way I showed up for it 15 minutes a day. If you don't have 15 minutes a day, then that's not a problem with your time and your commitments. That's a problem with your time management. Every single person has 15 minutes a day in order to dedicate to something that really, really matters to them. Why do we do that? Why do we make excuses? Why do we sabotage ourselves? Why do so many people stay in shadow callings or shadow careers for so long without making a pivot, without making a change? It's because unconsciously, there's so much fear about that change. And so I want to talk about the most common fears that I see working with my clients so that way you can just kind of notice, is this happening for me? Is this something that I need to clear out? Because what I've seen is when we clear out these unconscious fears, we are pulled toward our purpose. It's much easier for us to create content. It's much easier for us to work on our businesses. It's much easier for us to show up for the things that we want. It literally is a pull. And I've even seen it within my business where I'll have periods where things will stagnate and I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Why is it stagnating? And I'll look and I'll be like, oh, because I wasn't doing this. I wasn't showing up here. And then I look at it more deeply because I know action is a symptom of an underlying belief. So if I look at it more deeply, oftentimes, 100% of the time is I need to rewire something on a deeper unconscious level. So then I'll do that rewiring work. I did it last year. And then that same month, my business grew by 4 times in a month, right? Same what will happen is as you rewire those fears, you will start to see things more clearly. It's like you take off smudged glasses and you set them down, and now you can see with 20/20 vision, because you can see the actions that you'll need to take. You can see where you are sabotaging. What I saw with myself is that I knew exactly the actions I needed to take, but I was not taking them. I was making excuses about taking them. So it was really easy for me to grow my business because I already knew exactly what to do. I just needed to stop my foggy glasses from blocking it. That's what will happen is you'll clear out these fears. Maybe that will lead you to your purpose, or if you know your purpose, it will illuminate the path for you to take. And that path is going to require you trusting and you leaping before you are ready. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the first fear that I oftentimes see is the fear of the unknown. We love comfort. Our subconscious mind's favorite thing is the familiar, but our greatest path is not built inside of the familiar. Our current path is built inside of the familiar. That's why it's familiar. So if you want to overcome and cross that chasm, one of the first things you're going to have to look at is, where is this fear of the unknown showing up? Where am I afraid of? And a great question for this is, what bad thing do I believe will happen if I start to pursue my purpose? If I start to show up? For a lot of people, it's the fear of being seen. I think now in this modern age of social media, that's probably the biggest fear that people face is, what are people going to comment on my posts? What are the people from high school going to think if I start posting about spiritual content? That's what I thought. Now I'm like, it doesn't even occur to me to think about that. But that stopped me initially, right? What are my parents going to think? What is my boss going to think? People will oftentimes say, well, like, I can't start a business online because what if my boss sees it? You still got to pursue your purpose, right? You can't let your current reality stop you from pursuing it. So that's a huge one, is the fear of being seen. I kind of think of the fear of the unknown as the overarching fear. It's like we have all these speculations about what will happen if we start to pursue that purpose, and then we break it down into these more sub fears. So the biggest one I do think for most people is the fear of being seen. It's the fear of especially being seen failing. What are people going to think if I fail? I thought this with my supplement business. I was so afraid to start to put myself out there. At first, I wanted it to just be a product brand without my face because I didn't want people to see what would happen if I fail. That's horrible psychology, if I might say, because what does it lead to? It leads to me preparing to fail, right? So that's another one, the fear of failure. So let's talk a little bit more about the fear of being seen, or the fear of what people think, the fear of judgment. You can call it any of those. But what's really, really interesting is when we feel rejected, it actually activates the same receptors in the body as feeling physical pain. It's actually physically painful for us. That's why when you go through a breakup, you can actually physically feel like you're experiencing pain because it activates those same circuits. And so when we associate posting on social media or creating a website or going on a podcast, being seen in some way with a threat to our survival, we will unconsciously resist that. And that unconscious resistance, it could be procrastination, it could be not having the time or the money, these fabulous excuses that we make. It could be always making excuses of like, oh, I need to go do this or I need to go do this. It could even be as simple as like you sit down to write content. This has happened to me. The reason I know all of this is because I've gone through all of this. It could be literally sitting down to write content or write an email or to record a pitch for something or I have a lot of actresses in my community, record an audition and just feeling blank in your brain, like you can't think clearly. That is a really big sign of a subconscious block. Because if that wasn't there, our mind wouldn't be resisting it. That's how brilliant your subconscious mind is at keeping you safe. I also want to just mention that the flip side of not overcoming these fears is self-abandonment. It's not living the life, it's living a shadow life. It's living a life lesser than you know that you came here to live. And I personally think that is the greatest risk of all. I do not want to be 125 years old on my deathbed. I don't know, maybe I'll live past that. I have no idea where we'll be at that point, but I don't want to be in that place regretting and thinking I played small. I wish that I had shown up more. I wish that I had gone after what I wanted. I want to publicly fail. I want to publicly show up for myself. I want to put out content that's cringy because I think that's way less scary than realizing 90, 100 years from now that I am not living the life that I came here to live. That to me is like the most awful feeling in the world, right? And that's the thing is we have to decide what pain we want to face because there's going to be discomfort. It doesn't necessarily have to be pain. It doesn't have to be suffering. It can be discomfort, right? We have to decide what discomfort we want to face and what we want to get comfortable with. Another really big one I see, and this I also think is more of a surface one. It's like some of these are more surface and some of them are more deep rooted, is the fear of making wrong decisions. This I see oftentimes, it's more of a symptom of people will be like, well, I really want to start a business or I really want to, start pursuing acting, but I'm not really sure what path to take. And they can live in that space, that purgatory for a very long time without making any actual decisions. That is where we need to do that deeper rewiring work. For all of this, you need that deeper rewiring work. For me, every single quantum leap I've made is when I do that deeper rewiring work. And it's like I cleaned off my eyeballs and I see the world differently. So noticing, what I want you to use this episode for is just to notice, where are you doing these things? And then ask yourself what's beneath the surface, and then join my community and we can rewire those things. Another big one I see is people call it imposter syndrome, but it's like, who am I to share this, right? I'm not good enough. I don't know enough in order to share this. But a really great exercise you can do with this is just look at the people sharing online. There's varieties of levels of skills, right? There's people like, I think of Dave Asprey. He's not a doctor, right? People would say like, oh, you need to be a doctor in order to share in the wellness space. And that's not true. And he's helped thousands and thousands, probably millions of people with his expertise because he's so devoted to his learning, right? And so stop looking and making reasons why you can't and why you don't know enough. I see this show up a lot as people always taking more courses, always reading more books, but not applying them, not taking the action, right? I'm always learning and taking new courses and reading books, but I'm doing the things simultaneously, right? It's when you're just kind of constantly consuming and always being like, oh, I need another coach, I need another thing, without actually implementing anything and being in the arena, right? When you are in the arena, when you're actually showing up, when you're actually doing the things, you're taking the risks, that's very different than when you're sitting on the sidelines learning. And I think it was Theodore Roosevelt who has this really great quote about being in the arena. And basically the sum of it is like, don't take advice from people who are not in the arena. This is another thing that stops a lot of people as well, is they will listen to their family members, their friends who have never accomplished what they want to accomplish. Stop taking advice from those people. Take advice about your purpose from people who have lived it, because they've actually put themselves out there. People who haven't lived it, they're speculating, right? It's like me watching a sports game and being like, oh, I think you should do this play, when I know nothing about what's actually going on the sports field, right? The same thing is true for your life. Watch who you're taking advice from. Is it people who have accomplished what you want to accomplish? Find those people and learn from those people rather than learning from your friends and your family, because your friends and family are amazing and they're great. But if they haven't done it, then they're basically just giving their opinion, an unvalidated opinion. Okay. It might sound a little harsh, but it's very true. Another really, really big one I see is the occurrence of the myth of tomorrow. It's this idea that I'll do this tomorrow. I'll show up for this tomorrow. And that is showing some underlying fear. Oh, I'm going to start my business when I get back from vacation. Oh, but then you get back from vacation and you got all this stuff going on at your job. So then you're like, okay, well, I'll start it when I'm on break, or I'll start it next week. Start tomorrow, 15 minutes tomorrow. Because if you don't, you're going to keep kicking the can down the road. And I say this because I did it and I see it over and over and over again with people who come to work with me. It's like all of these patterns are so universal. We do all of these same things when we're procrastinating something we're fearful about. So looking at that as well. Another fear I see come up for a lot of people as well in pursuing their purpose is the fear of being wrong, the fear of like being canceled, right? If I share something and people are going to make me wrong for it, it's this fear of being misunderstood. It's if I put myself out there, especially if you're somebody putting something out there that's really from your soul, that's a reflection of who you are. Like my business is very much from my soul. It's a reflection of who I am. I could be scared of being wrong, right? I could be scared of what are people going to think of me, or people tell me, oh, that's not right. You can't say that. But I can't waste my energy thinking about that because that would stop me from pursuing my purpose. And I'm going to be wrong and I'm going to make mistakes. And I'm okay with that. For me, that is part of the course. That's part of being in the arena. And I don't expect perfection of anyone else. So I don't expect it for myself as well. Right. And so this is also part of that perfectionism personality type of not wanting to be wrong, of not wanting people to judge you. And that is one of the biggest things I think you have to overcome to really pursue your purpose. I think another big piece of purpose pursuit as well is money and our relationship with money. That's huge, especially if you go from like a 9 to 5 where your income is quote unquote stable, which I don't even really believe that anymore, to a business where it's more up and down, or it can be more up and down. And especially when you're first starting a business, there's more risk inherently. So working on that money relationship, that's the first point I wanted to make, is really looking at your relationship with money and your relationship with ability to take risk. Because I believe that it's actually way more risky to stay in a job that you don't like for a steady paycheck than it is to actually go out and try something and pursue something that may fulfill your soul than spend 40 years in a career that isn't right for you. I think that's a way bigger risk, in my opinion, right? Yeah, maybe you'll lose some money, maybe you'll lose some time, you might struggle, you'll probably fail a little bit, but I think there's not even a close comparison between spending all of your time in something that's not right for you and something that isn't meant for you. When I decided that I was no longer going to do my supplement business, I was basically at this point where I was going to either invest in it and get investors and really, really grow it. It was doing well and it was like ready to do even better. Or I could leave and step out and do what really mattered to my soul. And it was a really hard decision because I had spent all of this time, all of this money, all of this energy building it up to that point. And I could see the money I could make. I could see the growth of that business if I stayed with it. But I knew on a soul level, I was like, this isn't what's meant for me. And I didn't want to do it. And that was a difficult decision I had to make. And those are the kinds of decisions that we'll have to make, whether it's leaving your 9 to 5 or it's leaving something that's unaligned for you, trusting that you know that something better is meant for you. One of my really good friends, before she met her husband, she was dating someone else. And she's like, it was actually a really good relationship. She's like, but I knew on a soul level it wasn't right for me. And so I broke up with him. And she's like, it was actually really scary because I didn't know if I would meet someone else. And then 2 weeks later, she met her now husband, who is her soulmate, who she's so in love with, right? But her ability to trust that things were going to work out for her, to step into the arena, to step into the chasm of the unknown, led to her greatest timeline. And I believe that is how it works, that we must step into the unknown in order to receive our greatest timelines. And when we are constantly living in comfort, then we're never going to do it. We're never going to receive our greatest timeline. We could receive a really good timeline, but it will never be our greatest timeline if we're not really willing to trust and have the faith in the creator, in the universe, because that's where faith is built. Faith is not built in a day where you know everything that's going to happen and it all works out perfectly. Faith is built when we don't know what's going to happen and we choose to trust anyway. So another nugget I want to leave you with is your soul is not uncertain. Your soul is not unclear. It is the human aspect of us that is unclear, that is uncertain, that doesn't know the next steps. Our soul knows. Our soul knows why we came here. Our soul knows what's meant for us. And the more that we can clear out the gunk in our minds, the fears, the doubts, the old memories that make us doubt ourselves and feel not enough, that make us so fearful of rejection, the more that we can clear those out, the more that we can express at the level of our soul and that we can hear the wisdom of our soul, the guidance of our soul. I find that the more that I've stepped out there, that I've healed these things, that I've stepped into that arena, the more that my intuition has gotten more clear, the more that I've been able to see the right path for me and take those risks. This isn't saying you need to quit your job tomorrow. This is saying, what can you do even for 15 minutes a day to show up for the life that you want to create for yourself versus the life that feels comfortable and safe? Another thing I want to mention, because I think it's kind of a kick in the pants a lot of people need, is that there's actually an opportunity cost to playing small and not living within your purpose. And the first thing to actually think about is the unlived life, right? There's the lack of fulfillment that you experience when you are living in a shadow career or a shadow calling, when you're not doing what your soul came here to do. That's a huge cost. In my opinion, that's the biggest cost of all, because I think when we're living in true alignment with what our soul came here to do, we are our most magnetic, our most powerful, we receive our highest timelines. But then there's also a financial cost, right? Of yes, maybe you are receiving a paycheck, but there's way more money available to you when you're living in your purpose. When you're truly on fire with that purpose, money flocks to our purpose. So there's the loss of that income that happens when we stay in those shadow careers. And we don't see it that way, right? We see it as safety, we see it as security, but it's not that. It's over time what's actually happening. There's the loss of connections. There's a loss of opportunities. There's so many opportunities that you can tap into when you are reflecting the essence of your soul. People are drawn to that. Opportunities are drawn to that. And when you allow yourself to be in that space, sure, there might be some people who aren't driving with it, right? I get unfollows on Instagram every single day. I don't care. It doesn't even occur to me to care, right? There's people who don't jive with what I share, but there's people who really, really jive with it, right? And then there's opportunities that come from that. There's experiences that come from that. Another consequence, and I think this is one we don't even really think about, is health consequences. So for a long time, I was living very out of alignment, right? I was in the wrong relationship. I was in the wrong career. And I've shared about this a little bit on some other episodes, but my health was pretty bad. I had rashes all over my body. I was very inflamed. My gut health was very, very horrible. I was very anxious. And I believe that it was because I was really, really living out of alignment. And part of that was because I was in the wrong career for myself. Now that I'm living much, much more in alignment, my health is significantly better, even though I'm a decade older, because there's this unconscious energy that we put towards managing when we are not living in our true alignment, right? It takes effort to do things that don't actually feel like they light up our soul, when there's so much energy that comes when we live in that alignment. The last thing that I want to share with you is the steps to living your purpose, right? I just want to give you kind of a simple pathway for you to follow. So the first is live in the end. So I don't care if you know what your purpose is. I don't care if you are completely unclear on what it is. I want you to write out, get a cute journal for yourself, write out a really clear vision of what you want your life to look like in terms of the work that you do, the money that you make, the appreciation, right? The recognition that you get, the impact that you have, the type of people maybe you work with. What do you want that to look like? And it can be really simple to start with, right? It doesn't have to be super complex, but write that out and begin every single day to visualize that. Because what you are doing is you're putting energy toward that future that you want to create, and you will start to attract experiences and ideas and opportunities that align with that. Right? The law of attraction, we become more attracted to your future than to your present. That's the first thing. Write that out and just feel into it every single day. That's going to help you whether you know what you want or you don't know what you want. This is the most important step. Then what will happen is you will start to get intuitive hits on what to do. Maybe you decide you're like, I just want to start posting on social media about my health habits. That sounds like a fun, exciting experience for me. So maybe you start to do that. Okay. You follow those intuitive hits. You follow what feels exciting and what feels interesting to you. If it feels like a chore, meh, but it still feels like on the other side of that learning, it would be really, really exciting and interesting to you, then that's something to follow, right? It's not always going to be the path of least resistance, because sometimes the path of least resistance is watching Netflix. That's not necessarily going to lead to your purpose. Maybe it will, I don't know. But typically It's going to be something that will stretch you a little bit, but will feel really exciting and good in a stretchy way, right? It might be uncomfortable, but it's stretchy. So that's the second step, is begin to follow those urges and those nudges. Then the third step is to begin to build self-trust. So we build self-trust by taking risks. Those can be really big risks. They can be really micro risks, right? A micro risk would be posting something on social media. A micro risk would be emailing someone about a job opportunity. These small risks that we can take where there's not really any downside. The only downside is the discomfort of maybe being rejected. There's this girl on Instagram. I'm sure you guys have probably seen her. And she talks about how her goal was to get rejected 100 times. And through that process, she became just really comfortable with rejection, right? The more that we get rejected, the more that we show our mind, oh, I'm not going to die from rejection. This isn't going to kill me. And that's okay. I'm not going to die from negative comments or people's judgments. That is the most liberating place that you can live from. So building those micro moments of building that self-trust. So what are some small or big risks that you can take? I personally, maybe I'm a little bit of an adrenaline addict. I don't know, but I love taking risks. I think it's really fun. So I will take bigger risks, right? And they pretty much, I would say most of the time, work out. Sometimes I don't, and I'm okay with that. That's a risk I'm willing to take. So understand where you're starting with your risk tolerance and find something that feels a little bit stretchy for you. And then you begin to keep building that. And that's how your comfort zone becomes the size of the world. The other step, and I recommend doing this throughout the whole process, is really understanding and clearing those subconscious limits. Because if you don't do that step, it's like you are going to be walking around with these really smudgy glasses that are like those Coke bottle glasses, so you can't really see that well. So you're going to be trying to make decisions when you're driving a car with a blindfold on. It's going to be a lot harder for you to very clearly see the next steps if you're operating from a lot of limiting beliefs, fears, doubts, old subconscious programming. And if you've never done the subconscious work, likely you are, right? And I'm sure you kind of understood that more through this episode. So those are the 4 steps. I'll give them to you again. Number 1, live in the end. Get clear on that vision and live into it. Number 2, follow the intuitive hits. Follow the guidance. Exciting, fun, playful. Number 3, build self-trust by taking micro or macro risks. Number 4, clear subconscious limits. Okay. And there's 2 ways that I can help you with clearing the subconscious limits and this whole process. One is I will link my program, Everything I Touch Turns to Gold, in the section. It's a little mini program and I go deeper into the subconscious limits related to money. But even if you don't feel like money is a focus for you, that's a good place to start because you'll understand more about the subconscious mind and the nervous system and how that limits us. Another way, if you're like, I just want to go, I'm ready for this kind of help, Jen, is send me a message on Instagram. @alignment with Jen is my username, with the word podcast, and I'll share a 5-minute video with you about my program where we do this on a weekly basis. You receive a library of over 50 rewiring sessions. It is what I use personally for myself every time I want to bust through a new limit. It's getting better and better every single week. It is the best resource, I think, for subconscious rewiring that I've ever found. That's it for today. I'm so happy you were here, and I'll see you next week. Bye.